Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 82 of Brainstoryum. Well, in the last show, there were so many useful, incredibly practical pieces of advice offered by fellow authors who have more experience than I do in writing fight scenes. From testing out moves physically, considering the feasible skill levels of your characters, or their lack of skill, before diving in, using shorter sentences to create a sense of speed and pace, all the way to ensuring that you hone in on the emotional and psychological experience of your protagonist as the fight unfolds. It's a lot to think about, I find, a lot to take in. I'm wary of trying to take in too much at once because these things take time and practice to really absorb. And it's quite easy, I think, to intimidate ourselves out of writing, out of a particular writing exercise by thinking too much about technique. Now, I want to continue with this deep dive and learn more about how to write fight scenes. And I have more to share, although I think it's important to keep that balance between spending time thinking critically, consciously, conscientiously, about these things, and on the other side, following the white rabbit of inspiration. Because there comes a moment when you pick up the pen or touch your fingers to the keyboard, and to capture the wonder that we experience when we read great stories. As writers, certainly in the first draft, I think it's worth giving in at least a little bit to this subconscious mind and letting ourselves be led down a pathway whose twists and turns we can't yet see. So let's turn our attention for a little while to technique, then it will be time to begin an unplanned, spontaneous adventure into the imagination, which I think is vital nourishment to our creativity, because that's what this show is all about. Now, I have been reading a book called Writing Fight Scenes by Marie Brennan, who is an author who started out as an expert in numerous martial arts and other fighting techniques such as fencing, I think sword fighting as well. And she actually started out very informally at college by helping out drama students by choreographing their fight scenes based on her knowledge. They basically sought her out because she clearly knew so much about fighting. And one of the things that really fascinates me about her book and the things she says in it is how she compares fight scenes in films with fight scenes in prose and the differences between them, the necessary differences between them. And I think she really knows what she's talking about because of all her experience. She says, only a film can get away with making a fight purely about the spectacle. In a film, she says, you may have wires and CGI. You can speed up or slow down the film, change camera angles. On stage, you have a static point of view and limited special effects. Well, she's initially comparing films to making stage theatre because that's where she originally began her work around fight choreography. But also just from this perspective, compare it to writing prose. Technically, you can only change the perspective of a written scene if you are writing in third person omniscient, although this would have to be very carefully handled so you don't end up head hopping, which would cause a jolt to the reader. For more on third-person point of view, I talk about this in depth in episode 34 of Brainstoryum. There's lots and lots to think about around points of view. I did a few shows on different points of view around that time. Can you slow the action down or speed it up like you would on a film? Or create a similar effect to a movie scene where the camera moves and shows you things from different angles? I think if you manage that through writing, it would be confusing for the reader in any case, because we always want to be with the protagonist and see what they're seeing and feel what they're feeling. The point of fiction, I think, is to be more emotionally and psychologically immersive and just closer. I think when we're reading, we are more emotionally and psychologically close to the protagonist, especially when the narrative includes their thoughts from time to time. You really can't get that with movies. Well, not very easily anyway. If you had, a voiceover or something, it wouldn't work for very long, I don't think. So while we don't have the spectacle-only options achievable through film, maybe that's not really a bad thing at all. Because in fiction, just a spectacle would be boring. As Marie Brennan says, in prose, a good fight scene is not one that leaves you with a complete mental image of every attack and block. It's one that conveys story. So these are just differences to observe between a scene you experience when watching a film and how a similar fight scene might be conveyed in prose, which necessarily needs and probably has more emotional connection. I remember one of the pieces of advice that cropped up in the last show from the amazing 9 authors who shared their knowledge around fight scenes was that it will only bore your readers if you give a blow-by-blow account. And as Marie Brennan says, to maintain the pace of the scene, you have to lose precision. Some sentences will need to skip over the detail of what's going on and give the reader a more general sense of the action, unless it is a definitive moment in the fight that's worth honing in on. And funnily enough, as I've been rereading fight scenes in Ransom Riggs' Peculiar Children series, they do tend to unfold with a descriptive interplay between what's physically happening and what the protagonist sees and feels. Fear, anticipation, working out what to do next, reactions to being injured. We are in the character's head, not outside of it, as we are when watching a combat scene unfold in front of us on a movie screen. Well, is that a lot to take in? Am I the only one wanting to press pause and stare out the window for a bit? That's okay. These things take time to absorb. Now, just a quick bit more of something else before we dive into the story brainstorms of today's show. I actually had just the one response this time on the writing prompt from the last show. Probably my fault for not posting on social media enough. I've been busy lately. But it was a tricky one, I will admit. The villainous connoisseur. It was Nick Vrakar who said, "Her fangs revelled viciously in her mouth. I drink blood because I thirst, but my collection is for taste. A pixie's blood is sweet. Succubus blood is like warm milk. I wonder how you taste. What are you?" Bethany said, "An assistant librarian?" "I've never tasted a librarian." Brilliant. That is just so deliciously odd, with a dash of wickedness in there. Well, without further ado, I think it is time to find out what new ideas and weird word combinations await for us in The Socks of destiny. That's right, and for those who haven't played before or listened before, Exquisite Corpse generates a bizarre sentence from the spliced together words and phrases of different players to create a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. And so I'm going to reach into the describing word sock for our first word. Oh my goodness, almost pulled out a whole bunch there. This is from me. Clawed. Something or someone is clawed. What's that going to be? Our next word is our noun, which is from Dave. Tombstone. A clawed tombstone. Oh my goodness. This is an interesting combination. It's like a tombstone is coming alive, or maybe has some sort of stone carving on it that just sort of seems to reach out of the stone. Our next entry is from the action sock, which is from Wendy. Cut to the correct size. So this feels like it applies to, well, a stonemason perhaps in this context, but only if the stonemason was the stone. That doesn't make any sense, so I'm just going to jump straight into the next sock, which is the describing word sock again. This is from Paul Thomas. Plotting. So that's not an adjective. That's why I say describing word, because you can be a bit more creative and use a verb like this. So what or who was plotting? Oh, this is from Riley B. Fish sticks. Oh my goodness. Okay, we have the clawed tombstone, which is a fantastic word combination. Cut to the correct size. The plotting fish sticks. The plotting fish sticks. I don't put it this way. I don't think the Exquisite Corpse works together as a whole, but there may be some intriguing ideas we can still pull out of this. I do like the idea of plotting fish sticks. I think they are the equivalent in the UK of fish fingers, which is weird because fish do not have fingers. This is something I used to think about, not so much anymore, but yeah, the idea of plotting fish sticks or fish fingers, it kind of pulls me into the realm of paranoia. A paranoid character, food plotting against you, fish that don't have fingers are accusing you of something, pointing said fingers at you. This is very, very weird. This is probably a bit too surreal, even for me, for the types of stories that I write. I don't go full on surreal, but I am intrigued by surrealist ideas, and this seems to be pretty bonkers. But at the other side of this, I do like the idea of a clawed tombstone. Not quite sure what I would do with that though, except that perhaps a clawed tombstone could cut something to the correct size. Ooh, what though? The size of a grave? Clearly nothing to do with fish sticks, but hey, you've got to try and find the story ideas where you can, because this is how it works with Exquisite Corpse. I think it's time. I think I'll just keep moving, and we will find one. I have faith that we will find one that will be story-worthy, and not just one to haunt us in our dreams or over our plates of fish sticks. So the first word is from Riley B. Glittering. Okay, the next word, which will be a noun, is from Got a few stuck to my finger. This is from Mariah. Complaint. A glittering complaint. That is a fascinating word combination. How could you have a complaint that glitters? Is it just that well written? Or is it something to do with something that glitters, like a complaint about, I don't know, a purchase from a jewellery shop? Or some other interesting item from an antique shop? Or a shop that sells magical items? So much from 2 words. So let's try for an action. Reach deep down. What I got here, this is from Paul Thomas. Vaguely remembered. If a complaint vaguely remembers something, perhaps there's an allusion to a fact or a detail or a person in this complaint. Oh, that sounds quite interesting. I am really intrigued now to see what comes next. Okay, let's see, who's this from? This is from Paul Benfield. Unwound. Unwound. So something that has been wound is now unwound. This makes me wonder, what could this be? Final word. Please let it make sense. Last word is from, if I can get it off my finger, Alessandro Bozzo. Oh, banshee. So in Irish mythology, a female spirit whose wailing warns of a death. Now this is an interesting exquisite corpse. The glittering complaint, vaguely remembered, the unwound banshee. Oh, there's a lot going on here. So an unwound banshee, is a banshee usually wound up? Unwound, well, in that sense, is an unwound banshee one that's more relaxed than usual? Or one that's been literally tied up, bound, trapped by someone or something? And a glittering complaint, someone writing a letter of complaint about something glittering, perhaps. I'm still attached to this idea of someone who's bought something from a shop that's either jewellery or magic or something like that, or a spell that's gone wrong. But in this complaint, they have vaguely remembered an unwound banshee. Sounds like a real puzzle. But I think I'll just pick out one last exquisite corpse, and then I shall use the pause button to have a think about what might be the best one to use for a story. So our first describing word is from Paul Thomas. Ironic. Something doesn't quite seem to mean what it's supposed to mean. I always find irony difficult to explain to myself. This is from Dave. Promise. An ironic promise. So, not really a promise. Ironic promise. Gosh. Okay. Let's wait and see what comes next. We have an action from Rachel. Drifted through. So I'm starting to think that makes it sound like it's a physical thing. If someone makes a promise to do something, perhaps it's written down. It does make it sound like a tangible thing. If it drifts through something, unless it drifts through your mind. This is from KT. Maudlin. So kind of sad or sentimental, but perhaps in a slightly foolish way. Final word. Is this going to make any sense at all? This is from Wendy. Housing. Oh my goodness, this is weird. The ironic promise drifted through the maudlin housing. Good grief, this is hurting my brain slightly, so I am going to pour some tea. This has been brewing for some time, so it might be a little overbrewed actually. I'll give it a stir nonetheless. Ooh, a few bubbles at the end there. I must have had some of this earlier. Okay, so the ironic promise drifted through the maudlin housing. A maudlin housing makes me think of a haunted house, except less blatant than that, less like there are ghosts in it, but more like the house itself has a personality. It's developed a personality or a spirit over time. I like the idea of a building having a particular spirit. And the idea of an ironic promise drifting through that space. Well, perhaps that's why the house has developed. Part of the reason why it's developed a personality is if, I don't know, someone promised to take care of it, or someone made a promise to their partner or someone else they were living with, someone living with a parent made a promise to them but didn't really mean it. And this is, whatever this was, this false promise that they didn't really mean, has kind of flavoured the building that they live in, perhaps long after they've left. Unless, of course, they still live there and the house persists with this atmosphere that is tainted by a false promise. Interesting idea. But which one of these exquisite corpses will I use? I think only the pause button, and I think a good 20 minutes with my pen. Perhaps some daydreaming first. Do you know what? Sometimes when I clean my teeth, it all comes clear. So when I say use the pause button, I often use the stop button, and there will be a long gap. But I will try and make up my mind between these three curious, exquisite corpses. Ooh, look, it has a cure for indecisiveness. Oh, ha ha, said Tabitha, kicking a coffee cup lid as it skittered along the pavement. I'm serious, said Charlie, jabbing a finger at the menu on the doorpost. It was a cafe they'd passed many times before, but it always seemed to be closed, with mirrored glass windows so you couldn't see in, or else it was too posh for ordinary people like them to just wander in. Its gilt-framed door glittered surreptitiously between blossoming flourishes of wisteria. Unconvinced, but so miserable she had nothing better to do than go along with her best friend's jokes, cruel jokes, Tabitha peered at the menu and started. Oh my God. The list, well, they weren't meals or drinks of any kind, surely. The list read like something from a weird fantasy book. Patrons may choose between a solve for psychological trauma, an adventure for the incessantly bored, a rest for the wicked, a cure for indecisiveness. Each is served with a drink of your choice. But that's you, said Charlie, bouncing up and down on her heels. You're indecisive. Isn't that what's really bothering you? Tabitha chewed her lip, frowning at the menu. That's bizarre. This is a joke, in poor taste. A rest for the wicked, come on. Charlie rolled her eyes. Tabitha, I've listened to you droning on and on about Mike for, what, an hour now? Shall I move in with him? Is it too soon? What if it's not that serious? But I don't want to end it. Tabitha raised her eyebrows as her cheeks flushed hot. Well, so sorry I've been getting on your nerves. Maybe you need She squinted at the menu's curly font. An adventure for the incessantly bored? Charlie sighed dramatically, her arms flopping at her sides under a sagging shrug. Tabitha, I'm here for you, always. We're best friends. But oh my God, you're driving yourself crazy. You can't carry on like this. You have to make up your mind. And it's not just Mike, it's everything. What to do with your life? Tabitha couldn't look up for the ache in her stomach that told her Charlie was right, though she hated to admit it and wouldn't say so out loud. A whoosh of air suction made her glance up. Charlie was pushing open the door. Oh well, whatever these freaks served, maybe they did nice coffee. Or hot chocolate. She could murder a hot chocolate. As long as you don't start blurting to other people about my issues, said Tabitha, nearly tripping up against Charlie, who halted the moment they crossed the threshold. The door wumped behind them. The cafe wasn't a cafe. It was a garden with flower beds, trees, and a winding path between them, opening into a lawn, except that the air had the closeness of a place that was indoors at the same time. A conservatory? Tabitha tipped her head back, staring past the leafy branches to see nothing but a mysterious whitish light glowing down from above. It might have been the sun refracted through white-tinted glass, except that it had been dull and grey on the street outside. Artificial lights, maybe? Well hidden. The path snaked into vivid green grass to a clearing in the centre. Not that it was possible to see how far and wide the garden stretched, where a circular pool splashed with a fountain, the clear water sparkling endlessly into itself. As they picked their way towards it under the shade of two leaning trees, a man no higher than Tabitha's knee hurried up to Charlie, waving her aside to a white bench. "Charlie, where are you going?" But Charlie, giggling with delight at the perfectly formed tiny man in his orange shirt and green trousers, called over her shoulder, "It's you they want to talk to." They? Who's they? But Charlie wasn't paying attention. On the bench, she was surrounded by 3 knee-high men who were offering her drinks and cupcakes on trays, the edges of everything sparkling with gold. Leprechauns? Is that what they were meant to be? Tabitha's head swam at the sight of them. Impossible. They were too well proportioned. There had to be some kind of illusion going on. Holograms, maybe? But the one who trotted up to her and waved her on towards the fountain seemed real enough. "She's right, you know," he said. "You're the one who's here for a reason." Tabitha stumbled on through the misty, whitish light that cast over everything and shivered through the trees. The path tapered off, and she stepped onto the grass, pausing to take it all in. Golden clocks, some tiny pocket watches, others as big as the door of a washing machine, lay strewn across the lawn, the hazy light slipping off their golden edges. Tabitha was so careful where she stepped, she almost missed the fact that the horse chewing the cud to the right of the small fountain was actually a unicorn. A second jolt, as a woman in an indigo cloak leaned out from her position behind the fountain. Tabitha tried not to gasp. Had the woman been watching them all this time? "Hello," said Tabitha. "What is this place, if you don't mind me asking?" The woman gestured for Tabitha to sit down on one of the lumpy oblong stones dotted around the fountain, like mini standing stones that doubled as seats. "This is a place of healing, if you choose it," she said. Not knowing what to say to that, Tabitha hurried on. "And you are?" "I was a banshee. Still am, I suppose, but I retired. It all got a bit much." She tilted her head as she nodded conversationally. Despite what she was saying, she seemed relaxed. Her eyelids, painted blue, were heavy-lidded as she smiled like a cat. "I still have the power of death. I just decided to stop using it. But any form of energy can be transferred into something else, you know. I should know. She leaned forward with a chuckle. I prefer not to scream these days. I just hum. This struck Tabitha as still worrying, as far as stories were to be told, for whether this was a playful act, or if the woman truly wanted Tabitha to believe it, it wasn't a comfortable tale to hear. But if you're a banshee, even humming, doesn't that do a little bit of damage? I mean, if your scream brings death, wouldn't a hum bring at least pain? Sometimes. Another gentle sideways bob of her head as the banshee observed the water. Light refracted from somewhere above, it was hard to tell where exactly, and bounced off the trickling water, sending shivers of brightness over her face. But pain and loss are part of the necessary tapestry of life. They remind us that we're alive and that death is possible. What would you like to drink? Tabitha did a double take at this abrupt change in conversation. Well, actually, she was thinking of that cure for indecisiveness advertised at the front door and what that was supposed to mean, but couldn't quite bring herself to mention it. Her curiosity wrestled with the ridiculousness of saying it out loud. The banshee's deep dark eyes rested on Tabitha, brimming with knowing. I think you must like hot chocolate? Tabitha laughed. Who doesn't? This was all very strange, but the offer of something so ordinary and comforting as hot chocolate broke the tension in her. Let me get that for you, said the banshee. Still smiling, she lowered her forefinger into the glittering pool. A gentle thrum started up, a breeze rushing round them, lifting the ends of Tabitha's hair, carrying with it a subtle melody. It shook the trees as it rose and fell. Tabitha stared, dumbstruck, at the fountain as it thickened and turned a rich, glistening brown. The soft melody on the wind. It was the banshee humming. The pool of chocolate whirled around, stirred by the music, or so it seemed, for the banshee's finger never moved, and there was nothing else to move the liquid. A leprechaun handed Tabitha a cup that appeared to be made of gold. Thank you, she said, meeting the banshee's eyes again across the fountain, who gave a smiling nod. Feeling foolish, Tabitha held out her cup and caught the steaming chocolate, which splashed against her hand, hot. She jerked, spilling some into the pool. Oops, she muttered. Like I said, always a little pain is stirred into the most pleasurable things, murmured the banshee. Which is what you fear, isn't it, most of all? With your indecisiveness. You fear the loss, the discomfort of knowing that anything you care for may be lost at any time. For this is the way of life and death. Tabitha froze, caught in the piercing depths of the banshee's knowing stare. So she did know a bit about why Tabitha was here. How? Were there CCTV cameras out the front of the cafe? But how could she be wondering this when she had just been scalded by water that had turned into not just chocolate, but hot, steaming cocoa? The banshee's eyelids lowered again, as if releasing her from this accusation. That's what it felt like. Tabitha lowered her head and sucked the splash of chocolate from the side of her hand. Once clear, a patch of red skin smarted at her touch. Should she complain? She would, but not before she'd experienced whatever this place had to offer. She filed the idea away for later, rather than start an argument with this so-called banshee now, and risk missing out on whatever this experience was meant to be. Tabitha decided she would write to the owner of the business as soon as she got home. For now, there was this beautiful garden, a unicorn munching on the grass just a short distance away, and this chocolate fountain. She dipped her cup into the thick, sweet-scented pool, this time avoiding the hot droplets scattered by the fountain, and brought it to her lips. Oh, sweet Lord! The chocolate was everything chocolate was meant to be, and more. Heavy, rich, It swirled over Tabitha's tongue as if animated by a trace of that melody before it slipped down her throat. Sweet, soothing, delicious, it sent a restless comfort racing down towards her toes. But a deep longing spiraled inside of her, of things never tasted and irrevocably missed, and of other things she might not ever get to taste or experience because of her tiny, pathetic life. Her flat share with a woman she barely knew, the job she tolerated on good days, her on-again, off-again relationship with Mike, the heartbreaking smallness of her life. The banshee's eyes met hers once more. Tabitha took another sip of chocolate and found she could take no more. It was too rich, too much, too heart-achingly heavy, as if she'd swallowed a dream of a life she'd always longed for and would regret not living for the rest of her days. Tears welled in her eyes, but she was powerless against this feeling, whatever it was. Magic? A concept believed by fools and children. And yet here she was, in a garden where the impossible seemed to live and hum and change water into chocolate. The banshee spoke. "And now for your indecisiveness, for that is why you are here." With a wizened nod, a scurrying of small feet came from Tabitha's left. A wooden tray appeared to float towards her of its own accord until Tabitha spied the feet underneath it of the little men. But all this faded in importance as she took in the bizarre array of items spread on the tray. Could they be? In 3 neat rows lay a range of golden doorknobs. "You must pick one," said the banshee. What are these for?" "For opening doors," said the banshee. She leaned forward. "Pick one." I'll stop there because it's getting quite long. I have written more, but this is the simplest, most natural place for me to stop in the story. And I'm not 100% sure how it's going to end, so things might change and evolve along the way once I've worked that out. It does seem to have a bit of an Alice in Wonderland flavour. So, is this how the glittering complaint vaguely remembered the unwound banshee? I've given Tabitha a reason to complain. I have a feeling that she forgets a lot of her weird experiences in this strange cafe or world, or whatever it really is, a garden between worlds. But then maybe she gets to vaguely remember, just in her mind or in her complaint, if she ever gets round to writing it, the unwound banshee, which I took to mean relaxed and semi-retired. Well, I think I needed a bit of escapism. Sometimes stories will show you what you need. And the scattered clocks? Something must come of those. I realise I haven't written a fight scene today, but then I think we write what a story asks of us. And who knows, if I finish and, develop and then finish this story, maybe there will be scarier creatures for Tabitha to confront when she opens the door to her worst fears with her chosen doorknob. Could her indecisiveness be a sort of force that creates, or at least flavours, the kinds of monsters she comes across through the doorways of this cafe? I feel like I have more to discover through this story, and I do love the interaction between psychology and adventure. Now, thinking back to the other Exquisite Corpses, what can I tempt you with? There was the maudlin housing with the ironic promise drifting through it. I nearly went for that one. There was the clawed tombstone and some plotting fish sticks, which simply made me laugh. But how about this unwound banshee? I think there are more possibilities to this phrase than what I've come up with today. Maybe you could ask yourself first, what is a wound or what is a wind-up banshee, to help you see the possibilities of its opposite, an unwound banshee. You know what to do. Get in touch with me on the contact page at annatizard.com. Just a few lines to describe a character or story idea that springs into your mind when you think of an unwound banshee. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.